Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be doing a little Total War Warhammer 2 faction overview video, as you can see. Today we're going to be looking at the High Elves. We're going to be looking at their army and everything, see what they're... Just kind of give you a good overview and vibe for the entire, High Elves faction here. Today we're obviously just going to be looking at more of their army and playstyle. We will eventually get into the campaign aspects of it later. But I just wanted to go over the faction as a whole and the army and playstyle as first. Just to get a little kind of general basis and background. So yeah, we got the High Elves and the custom battle here, so we can display all of their units here. So yeah, let's get into the High Elves here. As you can see from the unit roster, not the biggest one you have access to here, compared to some other unit rosters. Just going through here, just compare it to some other unit rosters here, and you start to realize, you have a fairly... I'll get back to them. You start to realize you have a fairly limited unit selection and kind of roster for your soldiers. But at the same time, you have, in my opinion, what is a more somewhat elite faction unit or faction army here. High Elves have solid lords and heroes that they can kind of lean on a little bit, and their infantry and cavalry and all their units as a whole really are a little more specialized maybe than some of the other factions, which kind of lets you get away with not having as varied of a faction roster here, because you have a little more of elite army, I guess you could say. So let's just go through these guys and go through the lords first. You can see you got a decent selection here. We got Princess, Prince, Alethonar, Emmerich, Tyrion, obviously, and Teclis. Overall, fairly good, and kind of flesh out lords. Tyrion obviously being pretty good, melee and just a little magic. Teclis being your mage, have a good balance of what you want your lords to do, and overall just a fairly good lords roster. Nothing crazy, but overall pretty solid lords roster. Down here at heroes, got some nobles, mages, different types of magic. Fairly fleshed out heroes roster here. If you're big on magic guy, obviously going to be great here. A lot of different types of magic and heroes to complement that. So pretty good as far as hero magic goes. As far as melee goes for heroes and everything, rather limited, but still gets the job done somewhat. So fairly fleshed out heroes here, especially if you're going down the magic route. Move on to infantry. See only 4 units, which is pretty limited as far as infantry goes in the game. But you have pretty solid infantry at the same time, and there's a very clear progression here and everything. Also, some of your missile infantry is also serves as your infantry, so you have a little more than you think you have. So yeah, let's go over infantry. First, your spearmen. These are your basic soldiers, spearmen. These are what you're going to start the game with. Early game troops. Not incredibly good, but for early game are fairly good, maybe above average troops. They've got shield spearmen, so they do a little better against cav. And pull up these sheets every time I go to a new unit. Those are the stats of the unit, so nothing bad, nothing terrible for early game units. Obviously got anti-large, just shielded, charge defense, So they're good, fairly solid starting units for your infantry. Good against, large units for cav, and they're shielded, so solid overall unit for your starter here. Just a pretty base spearman unit. Next we got the White Lions of Trace, I can't remember how you pronounce that. And these are pretty good, kind of mid to late game infantry unit here. It's probably like the third type of infantry you're gonna lock, after the Lothran Sea Guard, which are basically infantry that also serve as missile infantry. Yeah, about these guys, they're axe infantry. They're not shielded, unfortunately, but they are fairly well armored, as you can see here. They do have armor piercing and some of their unique abilities down here. So yeah, fairly strong unit, very heavily armored and tough units that you can, stick into a fight without having to worry too much about them. Good against, any big armored opponents, as axe infantry like this generally is. Fairly strong, just all around a fairly solid unit for the, White Lions. I just got the Sword Masters of Hoth here. So yeah, a little more late game, mid to late game here. It's the strengths and weaknesses. They got deflect shot, armored, armor piercing, and anti-infantry. So yeah, all around, pretty good, solid all around infantry unit here with the swords. Fortunately, not shielded, but they are armored, so they're still fairly tough. And they have deflect shots. And if you need, as far as battle against other people, they're pretty good against really anyone. Obviously, they're anti-infantry, so the bulk of the people they probably are going to be fighting. They have a bonus towards, which is nice. And then armor piercing. Certainly heavy armored infantry units or anything that's heavily armored is something that these guys can handle rather well, which is always a nice bonus to have in any of your units that are going to be engaged in that melee combat with them. So yeah, solid little sword unit here. Next we got the elite units here, the late game amazing Phoenix Guard. Very good unit. Have very good leadership, have very good armor. Hit like a truck, are good on defense. These guys are really just an amazing unit. They're a late game unit. Very good infantry unit for the High Elves here. We got the attributes and strengths. They're anti-large, they're armor piercing, they're armored, charge defense against all. So these things aren't going to get caved down and charged into by cav and heavy and large enemies and flee. They're armored, so they're tough. They have armor piercing, so anything heavily armored that they're facing, whether that be infantry or anything large, it's going to be, not do well against these guys. And they have anti-large, so any big monsters they might be facing against other factions aren't going to do well against these guys, these guys are just all around a very strong, reliable infantry unit, which is kind of the theme for every level of infantry that the High Elves get. Are they extremely flashy or amazing overall, or even at one effect? Maybe not, but overall they're very good, or they are very good overall. They might not be incredibly flashy or anything amazing like game breaking or amazing at one specific thing, but all around they are very good, solid, reliable infantry units, and that's what you want. And that's kind of the theme for the High Elf infantry. Next we got the missile infantry here. We got two true missile infantry. First we got our base archers here. These guys aren't very heavily armored, obviously. The leadership isn't great. These are your starter units. These are your starter archers, and they get the job done. They don't really need to be armored or anything, because hopefully it doesn't come down to that. Just roll down here. Good range. Yeah, these guys hit hard. They have good range. They've got a good amount of ammunition. Got decent leadership for what they are. So yeah, all around just a solid archer unit at the start of the game. Nothing flashy, but solid all around, gets the job done. These are the stats. Next we got our archers with light armor. So these are a little more advanced mid-game archers you get. Obviously a little better leadership and obviously better armor. Them being lightly armored, which comes in handy if they ever do get in a sticky situation, which is nice to have. Nice bonus to have over the regular archers. Again, their strengths, good range. Yeah. Again, these are just a slightly better version of the archers you were just using. They're slightly more expensive, but you get some better stats, and you get, the increased armor with them if they ever get in a sticky situation. So something nice to upgrade to later in the game when you have, the need for more advanced archers like this, more protected archers. Again, nothing flashy, but gets the job done at shooting arrows at the enemy. Next, we got the base Lothern Sea Guard, which is both more of an infantry and kind of also dual purpose missile infantry. These guys are basically just infantrymen. They have spears and everything, but they also serve as missile infantry. They throw projectiles at the enemies that get near them, and then they fight, and then they can fight as basically a regular infantry unit. Because of that, they have fairly good leadership and armor for a missile infantry unit. Get them fairly early on in the game, so it's a fairly early game unit. And they're nice to have. Having a solid infantry unit that can also double as, a missile unit. Very nice to have, especially early in the game. Got good stats and everything. There's tributes. They also have an anti-large, which is nice to have early in the game, just in case you go up against any monsters that need taken down. And they have charge defense against large foes. So any large foes, it's nice to have an additional bonus, as well as just being a very good early game unit for missile infantry and regular infantry. Then we got the Lothern Sea Guard with shields, which basically is just a slight upgrade over everything I was just talking about. Obviously they're shielded, so a little more protected and resilient of a unit. So yeah, just a slight upgrade here. Definitely something you want, just because that shield, and especially when they get into that anti-large or just regular infantry roll, which they will after they run out of ammo or the enemy reaches them. Nice to have that extra protection and resilience. That goes over that. Common theme against infantry and missile infantry here. Nothing too flashy. The Phoenix Guard, though, are an exceptional, very elite unit, I will say. But overall, nothing flashy, nothing fancy. But overall, just very good all-around units that are very reliable and solid. So yeah, that's kind of the theme here. Next, you got Cavalry and Chariots. Start with the base unit here. Larian Reavers. The first cavalry unit that you get production towards. And yeah, nothing fancy here again. This is an early game, decent charge, shock cav unit with a decent amount of armor and leadership. Got good speed, charge. And yeah, just a solid early game base cav unit. They've got Vanguard deployment, which is nice to have if you want to do some tricky stuff with them. And obviously they're very fast as being cavalry. Yeah, nothing hugely special here, but a very good, solid, dependable early cav unit. Obviously, maybe no Bretonnian cav here, but that's probably the same for most of their cav units, but very good, reliable units. Next, we got the Silver Helms, fairly more progressed and armored and leadership and harder hitting unit here. Also shock cavalry. They have the added benefit of not just being fast in Vanguard deployment, but they're also more heavily armored, and they have anti-infantry bonuses as well. So, kind of a harder hitting and more versatile shock cavalry unit. Not only are they more heavily armored, hit harder, have better leadership, and go against infantry better, which is kind of their purpose, but they're armored more. So it really just a better upgrade over the Elwyn or whatever, Reavers, in every way you could want. Another very good, dependable, all-around, solid cavalry unit here. Again, nothing crazy, Bretonnian, amazing, awesomeness cavalry, but still pretty solid. Silver Helm shields, again, just a slight upgrade over what we were just talking about. Obviously, putting this on them has all the same benefits as, what we were just talking about, but you get a little more protected and dependable and armored cavalry, which is always nice to have for the survivability of your cavalry. Next, we got our chariot unit, the Ithamar. Yeah, totally. Ithamar chariots. Obviously, a chariot unit. They got a 1 count here. Fairly heavily armored and decent leadership. They're anti-infantry and they're armored. Overall, an okay unit. I'm not a particularly fan of chariots at all. Base game, and not a huge fan of these chariots either. It's only a 1 count unit if I remember correctly. And chariots are a bit cumbersome and weird to control and manipulate like you'd want. So I tend to steer away from them and favor regular shock cav if I can. With that being said, it does have a place. It's a fairly decent unit. I just think sticking with regular cav is a better alternative here. That being said, it is a decent chariot unit. That is anti-infantry and fairly well armored and hits fairly hard. Lastly, but definitely not least, Dragon Princes are late game shock cavalry elite units. These obviously very good, very overall just a solid, very good elite cavalry unit. Very good leadership, or solid leadership, very good armor, good speed obviously, they hit like a truck. You can see they have dragon armor, which is always nice for their survivability and just prowess of the unit. They have martial mastery, and they're armored and shielded, again, for the survivability and toughness of the unit. Very tough, very hard hitting, very fast, very good overall unit here. Very good cavalry. Next we have the Missile Cavalry and Chariot. So we got the Elven Reaver's Archers, which is basically just your regular Elven Reaver Cavalry. Obviously they swap out the weapons for their bows here. Overall solid early game Missile Cavalry unit. If you like using them, kind of keep them on the perimeter and picking off units, they're okay for that early to even kind of mid game. Nothing special, but a solid okay unit here. Next, you got Tyrannoc Chariots. Again, not a huge fan of chariots, especially in such a maneuverable role like this. I don't think they maneuver as well as, say, regular cavalry, but it is a little more advanced than the previously mentioned cavalry, and might hit a little harder. So, if you want to do that, I just don't think they maneuver as well as regular cavalry, and I don't think they're as survivable. So, trade off. It is what it is. So our monsters and beasts is something kind of exciting here, something that actually are pretty decent at towards the late game especially. Start with the Great Eagle here, which is the first monster you're going to have access to. Not an amazing monster or beast in my opinion. It's solid for the early game and can do a lot of damage to early game units, but it gets progressed past rather quickly, and even in the early game isn't the most durable monster you've ever seen. It can do a lot of damage, it's very maneuverable, but not very survivable, which is kind of a shame for something like this. So yeah, is what it is. Okay, early game, hard hitting, monster unit. Next we got, our Phoenixes, our Flamespire Phoenix here, particularly. Big upgrade right here. A little more survivable and just a better hard-hitting unit. I like the Phoenixes a lot more. They have Rebirth, which is a nice ability. Death from Above, which they can do magic abilities above them. Much more maneuverable in my opinion. Much harder hitting. Much easier to keep alive and do a lot of damage with. They have more magic and they have armor piercing. So overall, very solid mid-game, the early game Phoenix unit. Can do a lot of damage, can magic and otherwise. And yeah, causes fear and terror, which is always nice. It's a solid monster flying unit. That's hard to deal with for early in the mid-game units and armies. Next we got a Frostheart Phoenix, another Phoenix. Again, Phoenixes, I think they're better than the Eagle by far, but I don't think they're in a matchup obviously against the Dragons, but solid mid-game monsters. Armor piercing, armor, attuned with magic, magical aura, terror and fear ability from the Phoenixes obviously. Very good maneuverable unit. I think this is a slight upgrade over the previously mentioned Phoenix. Stat wise and everything. Is a little more tuned to late middle game, mid game. But yeah, overall just a very solid Phoenix to replace your Eagle or your other Phoenix with. Pretty solid monster unit here though. There we are. Getting into our dragons. First up is the Sun Dragon, which obviously is probably the worst, but nothing compared to Star Dragon, but it's a dragon. I mean, it's gonna be good. Yeah. Here are the stats, abilities, and strengths and weaknesses. It's armor piercing, sun dragon buff, scaly skin, and causes terror. This is a very good monster unit. Assuming they don't have a bunch of anti-monster and big, large units, this is fairly survivable and maneuverable. It hits like a truck with the dragon's breath, the armor piercing. I mean, just the health and raw power of this is just gonna tear through a lot of units mid to late game. I mean, it's a dragon. I mean, it's a very good monster to throw into your army just to add a little extra oomph and, you know, damage and awe and terror, which is really nice, especially against low morale units. Can get them morale a lot. So yeah, overall, what is there to say? It speaks for itself. Very cool unit. Next we got the Moon Dragon, getting better and better. Here are the stats, overview, abilities, attributes, and strength and weakness. Again, scaly skin causes terror, which is awesome. Moon Dragon's breath and armor piercing. So I think this is just a slightly better version of the pre-mentioned dragon. Costs a little more, but has a little better stats and hits just that much harder, which is always a good upgrade once you get this thing. And yeah, obviously a very different type of dragon, but yeah, just a good upgrader complement to your Sun Dragon to have in your mid to late game armies. Hit very hard, are very good monster units. Last but definitely not least, the Star Dragon, the best dragon you can have in your army. Very good upgrades and replacements for your Sun and or Moon Dragon, or a complement to them. Probably the best armor, probably the best dragon stat-wise and ability-wise. They hit harder, are more maneuverable, they're, you know, more defensible, all of that, and better leadership, I think, right? Yes, sir. Yeah, it's just a good stat boost for overall of your dragon. They got the Star Dragon breath. Obviously the terror and the fear, which is good on all of your monsters and beasts. Especially this one, for low morale units especially. It's got the dragon's breath, the scaly skin. It's more heavily armored and defensible, which is always a good upgrade. And it's got armor piercing, which is always amazing to have for heavily armored units. So yeah, hits harder, easier to defend, got better leadership, better abilities and stats all around the board. Very good unit. Very good monster for late game play. Last section here is artillery and war machines. You only have one. Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. You get this fairly early on in the game, and is a good artillery piece to bring one or two of these things with your armies, especially early to mid game. Late game, this thing becomes not as effective as it used to be, but still, if you want artillery, is really the only thing you have, and not terrible to bring with. Personally, I don't care for it that much. I like having archers or some other unit like beast or archers or missile cavalry in its place most of the time. But if you like artillery and more defensible positions and battles, always good to throw one or two of these in here for a little extra hitting power while the army is approaching. Does have armor piercing missiles and multi-shot ammunition. Overall, just a fairly average, okay artillery unit for early to mid game use. And that does it for the High Elf faction here and their army. So yeah, overall, I'd say for the most part of it, there's a few exceptions with the Phoenix Guard and the Star Dragon and everything, and even the Dragon Princes. Now, for most of the game, you're really focused on slightly above average and kind of all around just very solid and good units. Nothing extremely flashy or standoutish at one part, but just all around very good units and infantry and everything. That's kind of the name of the game for the High Elves for a while. And then late game, you get some very cool, unique, and very powerful infantry, cavalry, and monsters and beasts. And you can really prioritize once you have a large empire, a lot of armies, a lot of good units here in the Phoenix Guard, the Star Dragon, and the Dragon Princes. They're very good, hard to beat, unique, very elite units that can just rampage through any army for the most part that you can really go up against. So yeah, overall, very average to above average army that's fairly overall balanced and solid. That transitions into a very elite and powerful force late game. That's what the High Elves kind of are. So yeah, thank you for watching. Hope you learned something about the High Elves and the unit roster and their general feel and play style. Gonna be doing some more factions in the future, as well as eventually transitioning to kind of campaign. So yeah, that's it for this video. Go ahead and check me out on Twitch if you like, gaming content. Not just Total War Warhammer 2, but mostly. We're gonna start a Let's Play over there soon. Definitely check out the Twitch if you want to see a Let's Play with that. Check out my Twitter and Instagram for updates, anything related to the YouTube channel. And check out my sponsors. I have linked to both my Twitch and my YouTube channels. To, pick up some amazing products and help support the channel. And check out my Discord for just hanging out, gaming, doing whatever you want, hobbying. And yeah, just a chill place. And yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you guys all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, hit the like and subscribe button. Really helps support the channel and grow the channel and get it out there. Comment down below your thoughts, any other type of videos, Warhammery or Total War at all, or any other topics you think I should focus on, or what you thought of the video on the High Elves. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.